Today I'll talk about the 6 biggest things that helped me have an unmedicated birth. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Elizabeth. I make mom and lifestyle videos, so if you enjoy that kind of content, make sure you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for your support. I'm mom to a toddler Dominic and a baby Elena, who's here with me today. I gave birth to both of my kids unmedicated. I didn't have an epidural or any other kind of pain medications. So today I wanted to share the 6 biggest things that were helpful to me to have an unmedicated birth. First of all, I wanted to say that every kind of birth is wonderful. I'm certainly not going to say that an unmedicated birth is better or anything like that. It's totally up to you and your situation. And personally, if I would have needed an epidural or a C-section or anything like that, I would have been totally for it. There are several reasons why one might want to have an unmedicated birth. For me personally, the biggest reason was just because I wanted to see if I could do it. It might sound a little bit weird, but I guess it was just a challenge that I wanted to see if I was up for. And I do have a high pain tolerance, so I figured I would be a good candidate for it. And also, when you do have an epidural, there are a few disadvantages of that. You can have back pain from it. You can't really walk with an epidural, so you're pretty much stuck in bed, and that can make the labor take longer. And usually you can't walk around for a while after birth. So I decided that I wanted to try to have unmedicated births. I did a lot of things when I was pregnant to prepare for having an unmedicated birth. These are the 6 things that helped the most. First of all was listening to birth stories. This is one that is relatively easy and free. Whenever I had a friend or a relative that had a baby, I would talk to them and figure out what their birth story was. But the biggest thing was actually listening to podcasts. The one I listened to the most was The Birth Hour. When I was pregnant with Dominic, there were over 100 episodes, and I listened to just about all of them. Now they have over 500, and I've listened to every single one. I am a few episodes behind just because it's been a little bit too crazy to listen to podcasts lately, but I've listened to over 500 different birth stories. Just hearing what people go through in their births and knowing all the different things that are out there and different coping mechanisms, just hearing so much information that's out there was super helpful to know what's going on in my pregnancy and once I was giving birth, just knowing all those things and knowing all the other people that went through it and they were able to have an unmedicated birth. That definitely helped me to be able to get through it myself. Number 2 is research. Especially in my first pregnancy, I did a lot of research about birth and particularly unmedicated birth. Different people learn different ways. Personally, I'm very much a visual and auditory learner, so I loved YouTube videos. A few of my favorite birth educators on YouTube are Sarah Levon, Nurse Zabe, and Mandy Irby. I'll put links to their channels in the description, so definitely check that out if you're looking for good educational content on birth. You can also read or listen to books. I have not had time to actually read a book in years, but I love listening to audiobooks. So if you prefer that way of learning, do that. There are lots of good educational birth books out there. I also like to watch vlogs on pregnancy and birth, and that's actually what inspired me to make pregnancy vlogs. That's not so much education as more just hearing what other people are going through and their stories, and I love that it feels a little bit like a community. The third big thing that helped me have an unmedicated birth was listening to hypnobirthing / birth meditation tracks. I didn't actually do a hypnobirthing class. There are actually classes out there that you can go through, but I had some favorite tracks. I'll link my 2 favorite below. Those were by Gabrielle Target, who is Australian and has a lovely accent to listen to. She just kind of walks you through like some meditations. They were great while I was pregnant to help me fall asleep and help me relax at night. There are some that are specifically for in labor. I didn't actually listen to them while I was in labor, but I listened to them while I was pregnant, and then I was able to think of those more during my labor. Especially in my second birth with Elena, there's one part where she talks through being able to actually control your pain levels. I did have a couple really tough contractions where I was kind of able to mentally lower the pain level, and that was a really cool thing to be able to do. I certainly am not one of those people that had a pain-free birth or anything like that. It was extremely painful, but that certainly helped to take the edge off. And it also helps teach breathing techniques, and that is really useful in labor as well. Number 4 is picking the right hospital and care team. I live in a suburb that's kind of in between 2 bigger cities, so I didn't have a ton of options, but I did have a few. I did a lot of research, and I picked a hospital that has a midwife team, both for prenatal care, and the midwives are also staffed 24/7 for labor and delivery, so that's what I picked. I saw midwives throughout my prenatal care. I saw a few different ones, and there were a couple that were my favorites, so I stuck with those. I did see several different throughout my pregnancies because I kept finding one that I liked, and then they ended up transferring to another office, so I had to change a few times, but overall I found several midwives that I really liked. They were encouraging in my pregnancy as far as being able to have an unmedicated birth. Now with my first birth with Dominic, he ended up having heart decelerations that weren't recovering, so they ended up having to call in an OB, so I wasn't able to actually deliver with a midwife with him. But with Elena, her heart rate was good enough throughout the labor and delivery that I was able to stick with the midwife the whole time, and it was absolutely wonderful. I loved that midwife. I'd actually never met her before, but she was the on-call midwife for when I went into labor. Also, my hospital has a pretty low C-section rate, and they have several rooms that have birthing tubs and are more for people that want to have an unmedicated birth. And they have a birth preferences form that you fill out, and I said on there that I didn't want to be offered any pain medication. I would be the one to ask for it if I wanted it. So nobody even asked me if I wanted an epidural. I think that is really important, so you're not even thinking about it while you're in labor. So picking a hospital and a birth team that was geared towards low intervention, helping support unmedicated births was super helpful. Number 5 is having a doula. Now, to have a doula, there is typically an expense for that. If you are on a tight budget, you might be able to find a doula that is in training that would offer free or reduced fee services for you. Of course, they wouldn't have as much experience, but it might be something worth looking into. But if you have it in your budget, I highly, highly recommend hiring a doula. I was able to get a lot of support with my doula, both through having meetings with her beforehand, and I texted her a lot throughout my pregnancy and then in my labor. She was really helpful in my birth with Dominic to help with my breathing patterns and just kind of guide me through the right way to breathe and labor. With Dominic, she actually came to my house and helped me labor at home before we went to the hospital. With Elena, my water broke and we left for the hospital shortly after that. The doula actually just met us at the hospital. I had a relatively fast birth with Dominic, so for my second, I knew it could be pretty fast, and I didn't want to spend too much time at home. It's a good thing we did because she was born about 2.5 hours after we got to the hospital. That brings me to number 6, and that is laboring at home. Now, this looked a little bit different between Dominic and Elena because, like I said, even Dominic's labor was pretty fast. I only had about 7.5 hours of labor with him. He was actually born about 1 hour and 15 minutes after we pulled into the hospital parking lot. We only had about a half hour in the labor and delivery room. And that's because of having a short labor and doing most of my labor at home. And that definitely ties in with having a doula. When you have a doula who's able to come to your house, that it makes it a lot easier to labor at home and having somebody to help get you through it. She also was able to check Dominic's heartbeat and check my blood pressure at my house. If we would have had an issue, we would have, of course, rushed to the hospital, but everything there was good. When you're laboring at home, you don't have the option of getting an epidural. Hopefully you can get a lot of your labor done in the comfort of your home. With Elena, I didn't want to risk having a car birth or anything like that, so that's why we left pretty soon after my water broke. I just took a shower and then we left. We were out of the house by 1 hour after my water broke. Those are the 6 things that helped me the most with having an unmedicated birth. If you had an unmedicated birth, I would love to hear what was most helpful for you, or if you're pregnant and considering having an unmedicated birth and have any questions or comments, definitely leave those in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe.